This will be recorded, of course. So this is the breakdown of the preparation for the final exam. Today is April the 13th. And this is LLM 4. So what we're going through today is homework number 6 in F major. This is the, as I said, the preparation for the final is going to be just like this, but in a different key, obviously. But the procedure for how to do the final is going to be exactly the same. So I'm going to write up the progression, and I'm going to break it down exactly what I would like it to do. We have a 1 chord. We have a 1/6 chord. 2/6/5. These are all things that you've done at one point or another. And then we have the sort of latest addition to our vocabulary, a secondary dominant. And as we saw last time we met, all secondary dominants are basically dominants of something other than the tonic. That is the best definition of it. In this case, it is the dominant of the dominant. And then we have a good old-fashioned cadential 6/4 chord, going to the dominant 7 chord, and then back to 1. Now, very, very often in the past, we've just called this one C 6/4 for cadential 6/4 chord. If you see a Roman numeral like here, today or since the 1970s, at least, in most schools, you would see a Roman numeral 5. In old-fashioned schools, that would be, for instance, the conservatories famously held on to the sort of pre-war model of calling this chord 1/6/4. So just be prepared that in tests out there, if you see them being done by people who were educated quite a few years ago, you might see a Roman numeral 1 instead of 5. It doesn't really matter. It behaves the same way, and the music is going to sound the same. It doesn't really matter what we call it. This is just a way for us to understand the sort of genetics of it, the DNA of the music, if you like. So here it is. That's your progression. That's as fast as we got right now. We're closing out early because this is basically what's in the curriculum that we should cover for this semester. So we've done our job. We're going to close out somewhat early because I want to just get this over and done with so we can get a preview to what's ahead of us next semester. Let's see. That's a better view, I think.
Question.
Yeah.
It's kind of new to me to see numbers underneath it. And it's really a trend that in my musical training as a kid, I was never brought up with. When did this come about to put a numeral? When did this come about?
Sometime in the late 19th century.
And they did this because they figure, okay, if people associate 1, they will know it's a tonic. If people see 2, it will know this is a subdominant. Is that what they did it, or they just did it because? It's
just a matter of trying to codify the syntax of the music. We can't really go too much into the history of the theory, but this is at least from, I mean, a lot of this stuff here originates, if you're interested, you should look up a German series called Hugo Riemann. I don't want to spend too much time on this. So a lot of this is referred to as Riemannian theory. The next sort of person who had a very, very deep influence on the way we are looking at analysis is Heinrich Schenker, who as of late, as of the last year or so, has become a controversial figure as people are sort of reassessing history, and we feel that today we know so much more than they did back then. But all the music originates and in the previous century, and the way that we analyze it and the way we understand it, harmony, is something that was codified along several tracks, obviously, but the most current system is probably that we can trace back to Hugo Riemann and Heinrich Schenker. This is the way that if you study jazz, for instance, you will still see these. You still see these what is referred to as Roman numeral analysis. So we're going to break this down. We're going to translate this to the way that we'll see it in jazz notation, and do it the following way. Whenever you graduate from this course or this school, you can do it whichever other way that you think is better. That's fine, but this is just a way, as I've said to the other class, a way of holding the screwdriver, basically. We just have to learn to hold the screwdriver and understand how that's different from another tool. So in the key of F, 1 is obviously F. 1/6 would be also F, but in this case, we have the first inversion triad. That means F over A. We can translate this into notation if we want. This will be F. This would be F over A. We understand, though, that the voice leading, we can see, is going to come out very, skewed. And that's exactly why what we've been studying this semester, because studying voice leading, meaning how to write up in 4 parts and how to get the voices to behave so that we can get from one chord to another and sing it. That's the whole idea. And that's a good idea because very many of you are going to be choral directors in your churches. So understanding how this works in the context of the voice is a really, really important tool. A 2 chord in F is basically a G chord, some type of G chord. And now we can look at the upper lowercase scenario here. We can see that it's a lowercase 2 chord. So it will be a G minor triad somehow. And we can also see that it's in first inversion. How do I know that? Well, from last semester, you remember when we studied all our predominants, we understood that this predominant here, the 2-6-5 chord, we compared that to a 4 chord, or to a minor 4 chord, or to a 2-6 chord, or to a 2 diminished 6 chord. And then we had a 2-6-5 chord. So we understood that this one is in first inversion. So we understand that it has B flat in the bass, scale degree 4. There's a number of safeguards that you can apply here, and you will arrive at the fact that this one here is a G minor triad with B flat in the bass. We can also see that there are 2 notes that are 1 step apart because we have a 5 and we have a 6. Let's just check that out. We'll write up our B flat. So we understand that these numbers here are intervals above the bass. It's not called figured root. It's not called figured key, or it's called figured bass. That is the system that we are applying here. So we have a 5 and a 6 above the bass, which we determined, because we know it, that that's going to be scale degree 4 in the key of F. So we're going to have a 5 and a 6 above it. And if I were to fill this in with all the intervals above, I would have a 6 and a 3 here. You can see that here's the 6 and here's the 3 in that chord. So I'm going to do the same for this one. I'm just going to fill in, all the intervals above the bass. However, you are only going to see the professional language. This is what you're supposed to know. So you are going to bring some knowledge to this game, right? The progression here is not one that we haven't done before or discussed before and sort of solved before. It's one that you've had a lot of homework in doing one way or another. In this instructional, I'm really just breaking down all the steps that you should do, and you'll have enough time to do it. If you check your email box, you'll see that I send out an instructional on Sunday, right? On Sunday night, it's in your email box from E360. sort of discussing the benefits of closing early, so we can move on after that. We can get a preview of the next semester, and also that next week I'm just going to leave you alone to do the exam. The exam is due on the 25th, which is Sunday next week at midnight. Anything arriving after that time, because I think you've got this entire week almost, and then all of next week. And I know that some of you are working very tight schedules and your kids and whatnot, or take care of people in various ways. So instead of having a class, I want to give up that time so you can do your exam at that time, if that's the only time you have that week. Okay, and then I'll resume again the week after the 25th with normal lessons, going through this, of course, so you know exactly where you stand, and also getting a preview of the next semester. So this would be my chord. If I invert that to root position, you can see what kind of chord it is. It's a minor triad with a minor 7. And it's in first inversion, 2, 6, 5. Then the next one here, it's another 6-5 chord, and it's a 5, 6, 5, or 5. So therefore, I have to now go to 5, understand what 5 is in the key of F. To do that, I have to just count 5 steps up from F. That'll be F, G, A, B flat, but even if you count it as a B, let's say you don't know the key signature, you'll still end up with C as your 5th scale degree. So F, G, A, B flat, C. So C is the chord to which we're going. And we're going there via its dominant 7 chord in first inversion. What is the dominant 7 chord of C? And you will find that that's G dominant 7. Like that. Quite simple. And you can also see that it's in first inversion. So that means I'm simply moving that up here, just as I did here. This is G minor 7 over B flat. And this one here is just G7 over B. And you can add the natural if you want. Okay, so the 5-6-5 chord, this one here, is a G7 chord. Not, I mean, the difference is it is not G minor 7, but it's G7 over B. And this one here, we're not actually doing this chord, at least not yet. But you have to think, where am I going to? So 5-6-5 off 5, you have to know what 5 is. Otherwise, you know, when we're trying to find something, we have to know what we're looking for. Otherwise, we can't find it. And we're just sort of stumbling around, and whatever we find, we'll say, oh, that's what I was looking for. Yeah. No, we have to know what we're looking for, otherwise we're not going to find it. If you know you're looking for the dominant 7 chord of C, that's what that means. So 5-6-5 off 5 is the dominant 7 chord of C, and it's in first inversion, just like this one here is. Like that one. And here, I've now arrived at my cadential 6-4 chord. Say to yourself, this is part of what we did last semester, right? So therefore, that may be a little bit in the background right now. What is a cadential 6-4 chord? Well, that's scale degree 5 with an 8, a 6, and a 4 above it. Remember that? Whereas a passing 6-4 chord was scale degree 2 with an 8, a 6, and a 5 above it. At least the passing 6-4 chord that we were talking about going between 1 and 1-6. So if I had a passing 6-4 chord here, for instance, between these two chords, I don't, but if I did, it will be scale degree 2, which is G, with an 8, a 6, and a 4 above it. This one here is scale degree 5, and let me just see if I'm actually adding that for your benefit in the exam, just so you have a navigation point. So that will be scale degree 5, which is C, and I'm also giving you the starting point. Let's see. Yes, I'm giving you the starting point as I'm giving you, just to show you what kind of tonic I would like. So you have a baseline that is basically ascending from scale degree 1 to scale degree 5. Scale degree 5 is repeated, and then it's going back to 1, and you can decide if you're going up or down. That's totally up to you. It's not going to be in this key, right? It's going to be in a different key, but the process is the same. This is all the information you're going to be getting. You're also going to be getting this, if I, let me see, yes. So this is all the information you're going to be getting. Scale degree 3 is here. This one, we'll wait to analyze this a little bit later, because there's something a little bit funky going on here that I just want to sort of discuss briefly. You don't need to get too hung up over it, really, because we have defined the cadential 6/4 chord as being scale degree 5 with an 8, a 6, and a 4 above it. Just stick to that, because that works. Once we get into the academic discussions, all of a sudden it becomes difficult, and people are freaking out, and they say, oh, no, I can't do it anymore, because now I don't know if it's a 1 or a 5 chord. And some people enjoy that confusion. Some teachers, some of my colleagues enjoy that confusion, because they think that by having a stand one way or another, that makes them smart or whatever. I'm not really sure. All I can say is that it confuses the students. So don't go there. And that's why I'm not adding anything right now. This complex here is scale degree 5 with an 8, a 6, and a 4 above it, and all the upper voices are descending by step. Just stick to that. That works. Okay, the next thing I want you to do is to plot in your baseline. If you've done your job down here, you would know that this one here goes from F to A to B flat. Remember that after the slash, that's what you have in the bass. So you now have B flat here. And this chord will have B natural. So you can see how elegant this simply goes right from 1 all the way up to 5, and then it closes to 1. This is a very good way of understanding how this behaves. Here, as I said, instead of skipping from F up to A, I could have inserted a passing tone. Don't do that for the exam. We are not asking for heroics or anything demonstrating how much more ahead of the curriculum you are. There's a couple of students who are keen to demonstrate how much they don't need this course and how much ahead of it oh, I can't believe that I'm in this class or whatever. Histrionics, they're sort of presenting. Don't do that. We're not asking for genius. We're not asking you to do anything other than this. We're asking for competence. Just demonstrate that and let it go at that. I'm sure you're brilliant. Whatever. So here, all right, here we can begin to sort of see these different things playing out. I'm now going to do a little voice exchange because that's the thing that we can do. I'm going to have the F going to F, and I'm going to have the A going to A like this. They're simply just exchanging positions within the system. Okay? And then I understand, so that's the principle of if you have a root position triad, put the third on top. If you have a first inversion triad, put the root on top. That works in 9 out of 10 cases. That's a very good way to do it. It's not the only way to do it. And if you're doing it in a different way, you're not going to get penalized. That's why I just had this discussion with one of my colleagues this morning regarding something slightly different, but similar in nature. I said, can you just send me the answer key? And said, it's not as simple as that, because there's not one way that is the right way. And then all the other ways are not right. That's exactly what the problem was with the old exit test, that in that world, there was right and wrong answers. It's not as simple as that. And some people got a very low score because they had a different answer. And it may have been even a better answer than what's on the test. We have to be prepared for that, especially when it comes to music history, for instance. There is no one way of looking at history, right? Is Johnny Rotten, is that good or bad music? The answer is it's either, it doesn't work like that. And it doesn't really matter if we like it or not. That was the other discussion we had with the listening test. Well, I don't like this example. I don't care, frankly, if you like it or not. If it's representative of a style, then that's all that matters. We're not here to pass judgment, right? As teachers, we're here to provide understanding, to try to break this stuff down, say, I don't like first inversion chords. That's not the point. You have to look at yourself like, let's say you're a lawyer and somebody comes in and they want to buy a company or get a divorce. So I don't think you should get divorced. I mean, that's not up to you. You're providing a service, right? I don't think that's a good restaurant to buy or a good bank to take over or whatever. That's none of your business. Just do the legal work. That's how I look at myself here. I'm just here to provide some nuts and bolts and hopefully a bigger understanding, hopefully, of how music works. Whatever you want to make of that, it's up to you. Okay, so if you have a root position chord, chordal third on top. If you have a first inversion chord, chordal root on top. Here's the first inversion chord. Put the root on top. The root of this chord is G. That's what gives it the name. The root of this chord is also G, so why not keep it? Right? Don't make it more complicated than it needs to be. And here we can see that we are coming from a 6-5 chord. And if you remember last semester, what we said about 6-5 chord or 7th chords as predominance, they work really well to have this pattern here at the end. So that will be this one, scale to be 3, going to 2, going to 1. Now you've got 90% of it done, right? Because you just have to get the outer voices to behave. And you can see that although we have some variation here, basically we are going this way with the soprano, and we're going this way with the bass. The bass is going up, the soprano is coming down. That's called contrary motion. That's a profoundly important piece of architecture to know about tonal harmony. And it doesn't matter what style of tonal harmony you're talking about. Tonal harmony simply behaves this way in many, many cases. It's a good piece of knowledge to know. It's like knowing about the law of gravity. If I hold my hand up and I drop it, it's going to go that way. It's not going to go that way. That's good to know. It's very good to know. Let's say you're a chef in a kitchen. You know, you can make gravity work for you, right? If you're a high jumper or something like that, or you do anything involving gravity, that'll be just about anything we do on Earth. You have to understand that in order to elevate yourself from the floor, you have to use some muscle power, and then you'll come down again. That's for sure. All right, so much for that, right? All I have to do now is to fill in the inner voices. How do I do that? I do it in close position, starting with the alto. Here, I know that in my F, I have an F here. I have an A up here. I need another F, and I need a C, because those are the notes that I have used, right? I know that I have to double the root of the chord. Not have to, but it's a good idea to do it, right? And the same thing here. Just double it like that. And if you can keep a note that is carried over from the previous chord. In this one, if I look at this one, I have the B flat already gone, right? I have the G already gone. That's this one here. Now I have to place an F and a D. If I look at that and say, is there any note that I can simply just repeat because it's easier for the singers? Let's say you have an amateur choir, you know, if you have an alto or tenor or whatever who claim, oh, I can't read music, you know, they can see that they're repeating the same note. You can stick it out to them on the piano, say, you are singing that note, and you're singing it 3 times. They can all do that, even if they claim that they can't read music. I don't know what that means, actually, but no matter what. Okay, so here, I look at the notes and say, okay, the only difference is actually the bass. So I can repeat this again. And again, I'm not evaluating whether this is boring or not. I don't care about that. I honestly don't care. If you think it's boring, well, it probably is, right? But you're singing the right harmonies, and they're easy to sing because look at this. Here, I've got so which note is, ask yourself this, which note is that above the bass? You have C in the bass. Which note is that? That will be the 6, because that's an A. The 6 you don't have to worry about anymore. You have to worry about, but you have to think about the 8 above the bass. That's 2 more than 6. So 2 more than A, so to speak, or just an octave above the bass would be C, wouldn't it? And then so now your octave is gone. And now if this one here is 6, then 2 less than that would be 4, wouldn't it? Ah, look at this. The alto is the easiest part in the world to sing because it just repeats this down F all the way here. And then it goes down by a step. This one has already gone down by a step. And this one here is going down by a step. And it has to be the leading tone rather than scale it before. Let's say you forget this in whatever key I'm giving you. Let's say you forget that it has to be the leading tone. That's okay. That's a little blip that we can clean up later. Not a problem. And here, like that. Oh, sorry, I'm now in the wrong mode here. Just erase the last 10 seconds. I thought for a second here I was in C major. This one here will go down by a step, and that's the step we have in the key of F and going down to here. Right? And this one is doubling up here. That's the way that works. Okay, so you can see that it goes down, and it's the kind of step that you have in the key of F major. I just blanked out for a second there. And that goes to the nearest note in the key of F. And this one here usually goes up. You can also, if you want to have a full chord here, you can go down. This is the leading tone, not the B natural. It would have been C, but this is the leading tone in the key of F. That is usually going up, but if you want the complete chord, I don't recommend it necessarily. I don't think it makes a difference. You can do this because the leading tone has been resolved by the same note in a different voice. Do you understand? So therefore you can complete this one, but it's going to be a little harder for the singers to do that. This is the best way of doing it. And now you have to put in the most boring tenor you can find. Basically, look at this, F, F, A, what note is missing? Well, it's the C, right? Well, the C is very good there. Here, you have an A, you have 2 Fs, C again, very boring. And now you look at this, and you look at what note have I not done? You've done the B flat, you've done the G, you've done the F, that's this one here. And so the D is missing, and the D is missing in this one here too. And now you see that everything is working out really well. You're coming into the octave in contrary motion, which is fine, which is the way it should be. and everything is resolved and proper, and that's it. That's your homework. As I said, this is not the only way to do it. If you have a different solution, that's the whole point of homework, that there can be many different solutions that are worthy of consideration. This one here works for sure. It's very boring. But what boring means in this case is that it's easy to sight read. And if you learn to write like this, you can write some pretty sophisticated music in your churches that can be arranged for chorus. And these days, a lot of choruses are just singing the same tune, all of them. They're singing basically monophonic music, which is fine. But I mean, here it gives you some more color to work with. And if you're singing, let's say, you want to arrange things that sounds like barbershop quartet, like, you have to have the chorus sing in different voices. You can't just have them all singing the same in monophony and then accompanied by a band. I mean, that's going to sound good, but this gives you more options. Okay, any questions so far?
In the 5-8-6 chord, where you have the C and the C, would you please point out where exactly is the distance on the 4th and the 6th? Where exactly? Just highlight that distance, please.
Yeah. So the octave, you I'm sure you get, that's a C above a C, right?
Mm-hmm.
6 steps up from C.
Will be
C, D, E, F, G, and one more, A.
A.
Yeah. And then if that's 6, then 2 less than 6 is 4.
Okay, that does it.
Yeah. And then you simply just go down by a step in the key of F.
Okay, thanks so much.
This one goes down by a step, this one goes down by a step, and this one goes down by a step. This is where I made the mistake before, just because sometimes when you speak and you forget what key you're in, that happens actually quite. Another thing that happens is that when you're close to the boards, especially up here, sometimes the lines are a little bit hard to distinguish. That's actually easier with a little bit of distance. Just saying. So yeah, you simply you see that the numbers go down, so just go down by a step. And then you resolve this one here to the nearest possible note in your target tonic. In this case, you'll see that you have an F, you have an F and an F, so 3 Fs and an A. That's what we call an 8-3 chord, right? We don't need to particularly to know that, but that's just the way it is. So when you're going from a root position, dominant 7 chord, to a root position tonic, major or minor, doesn't matter, you will end up, if you're just following the voices, right, you will end up with 3 roots and a third. That's a perfectly good tonic. The 5th, if you want it in there, should come from this voice here. The fact is that the 5th doesn't do anything in the tonic that the root doesn't do just as well. It doesn't sound any more tonic-y than a chord without a 5th in it. But that, these are sort of, let's say, sophistications that you can do. Let's say you're an auto mechanic and you learn how to use a screwdriver. If you turn a screwdriver around, you can also use it as a hammer, right? But that's not something that we require of you to do. It's not, it's not even the preferred way to do it, but you can, in a pinch, use the butt of a screwdriver as a hammer or the butt of another tool. You understand? And you can also use a screwdriver as a crowbar of sorts, right? You can do that to pry a belt off some wheel or whatever, or a tire even. But that's not how we have to understand is not composition. We're not writing a song, right? We're not doing anything other than studying how the voices can be sung in the easiest possible way, and still use some pretty sophisticated harmonies. These are, believe it or not, pretty sophisticated harmonies. These are the ones that you're going to see in gospel songs. You're going to see them in jazz harmonization. You're going to see them in Bach chorales too. It's the same universe. Here, we're not really involved with any sort of kind of rhythm of sorts. We're simply just distilling, as I've made the analogy before. We're taking a little bit of water in a glass and watching how water is behaving when you're warming it up, so it boils, or when you're freezing it down, or when you're conducting electricity. You can't do that in the ocean. You have to sort of isolate this in a way because it's more meaningful. It's a more meaningful result. If you were to analyze this, we would see that this one here presents a little bit of an issue because it is in fact an F major triad over C. This one here is definitely a C7 chord. That's why I put it there as C7, and this is definitely an F major chord. This one here can be, and when you are, let's say, the cantor or the music director in a church, the chord voicings or the chord chart that you're going to give to your bass player or your keyboard player would look like this. F over C. I know that makes absolutely no sense at all because F is your tonic, and this doesn't sound like a tonic at all. You play it and you'll see, or you will hear it. This one most certainly is a C7 chord, but this one here we have to understand that the designation of 5 is because it becomes a 5 chord. This is a decorated 5 chord. It has 3 notes on top that are really not part of the chord, that are sort of decorations. Right? It sounds like this. So this one here would move. We can hear that it's just a little decoration before we reach the dominant 7 chord. Okay, but don't sweat over it. Stick to what you know. Say it's scale degree 5 with an 8, a 6, and a 4 above it, and you will be good. That's all we need for this part of the course. The bulk of the course was actually last semester, if you think about it. We did all these different predominants here. This is also predominant, but it's a sort of an amplification, an expansion of what we already know. Similarly, with all the augmented 6 chord stuff that we did for the midterm. So we sort of started with the most complicated stuff first. Oops. And that's very deliberate because the complexity of it, of the augmented 6 chords, is basically something that we can break down and understand quite easily. And you all did. Not perfect, but for some of you it was perfect. But for a good many of you, it was certainly very competent, and you could do the stuff that will enable you to go on in your music studies at some point. By comparison, this is pretty easy because it's straightforward theory. The Ganesha 6/4 chord we did last semester. We also did a Parson 6/4 chord. These guys here we did last semester. Understanding secondary dominance, pardon me, is not a big deal by comparison to the augmented 6 chords. And all of it sort of progresses very logically. So basically, if you can handle this, you're done with theory 4, and we can go back in theory 5, expand a bit, write some longer progressions, which we already started doing. I was just sort of testing the waters a little bit, and I decided, okay, let's get this finished up, and then we can explore what that means to write longer progressions and start to use the more sophisticated chords, say between here, and we start using the augmented 6 chords somewhere around here, because it belongs somewhere in that region. Okay, questions?
About that, I just want to comment. I really appreciate your methodology of expanding and whatnot. I would just ask, would you say next semester in element 5, if that was to come, can the student kind of talk back with the hymnal and say, okay, so here's how this chord will play out in let's say when the saints come marching in. So can the student just handing assignments where he is manipulating the chord in 4 voices in the context of a hymn?
Of course, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, with all this stuff here, we sort of concluded the basic components of tonal harmony. So yeah, in semester 5, there's a lot of room for taking it in whichever direction the class wants, or individual students in the class want. And then we have to do a little bit of atonal theory as well, because that's an important understanding, especially again, if you're going to grad school. We have to sort of cater for that first, for the possibility that most of our students at one point or another, will go into grad studies. And since we don't currently have a graduate program here, we will have to prepare our students to go to grad school somewhere else, somewhere not NIAC. That's a pity. We actually had the whole sequence mapped out. I authored an entire program, and then basically they forgot to hand in the application on time. And yeah, and at the next go around, we were in financial trouble, and the state put their foot down and said, we can't open a grad program at this point. We have to be financially stable. And that's how we ended up selling the upstate campus. And now we're more financially solvent. So maybe that will happen in the future. I don't know. We'll see what happens. A lot of things happened since then, but that was a pity. It was really a pity that we didn't get that established, because that could have really taken things in a different direction. So now we have to sort of cater for the reality that out there in the quote unquote real world, we have to send you to Manners or Manhattan School of Music or Queens College or Brooklyn College or Hunter or, whatever. There are a lot of schools out there, and they all do things differently. And they, frankly, are a little bit behind the way that we're trying to integrate different styles of music. All right. Perhaps that's a good thing. Perhaps that's not such a good thing. I don't know. I think opinions are, they vary on that issue. Okay, you feel ready?
Yeah, you could go on. I replied you could go on.
Yeah. Okay. So I think we'll just close it here and say, this is all you need to do. I'll send out the final, and you have until the 25th at midnight to do it. Okay, go back. Fantastic. Thank you, Joel. And so go back and watch this tutorial if you need to see it again. I apologize for that little snafu up here, but I think we cleaned it up. You just have to think logically, basically, that when numbers go down, that means the voice is going down. A 6/5 chord is a 7th chord in first inversion. Whether it's minor 7, or it's dominant 7, it's a 7th chord in first inversion. That simply means that it has a 7th in it, and it sits on the chordal 3rd. If you can handle that, which I'm sure you can, it's going to be a progression that is very, very similar to this. There's not going to be anything else required of you right now to pass Theory 4. Theory 5 is a sort of review course, right? We can catch a lot of things that we need to catch, add a few things, and add some more interesting personal angles to this. Okay, dokie. Great.
Can I just stay with you for a minute? I wanna have some conversation.
I gotta move on, man, because I'm teaching till 9:30 tonight.
Oh, well, I'll then just send you a text, and when you have time, you can reply to that text.
Okay.
Have a great rest of your day, Professor Lars.
You too, guys. See you later.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Too busy.